Hello, team, and welcome back. This time, week 4, where we are talking about clear vision and goals, as well as a second topic, motivation. They're related. So we'll start with strategic alignment as we get to clear vision and goals. Strategic alignment is the process of ensuring that all aspects of the organization, all of it, right, including the goals, resources, and any activities that we might be leading, any resources we might be leading, any goals we might be driving towards. We want to make sure that they're coordinated and in harmony with this overall corporate strategy, right? So, strategic alignment involves aligning your department with the executive suite or the CEO's suite, aligning your team with the company objectives, aligning your processes with the company objectives and the systems as well. Because you want to make sure that they work cohesively together towards some strategic vision. Now, there are two graphs that I like to draw at this point just to demonstrate what I am talking about. One is a funnel. And I assume many of us are familiar with a funnel. Some of us might use a funnel to put oil in our car. Some of it might use to cook with, to put oil in a pan, or to, as you want to get some sort of icing out of a squeeze thing, right? You have this funnel. And so at the strategic level is the top of the funnel. This is the big picture. This is where we're going. At the bottom is this detailed plan, right? And your role, no matter where you sit in the organization, is to ensure alignment from the company's strategic objectives, right, down to your very team, resources, activities that you're working on. You have to make sure that there's this alignment exists because strategy will develop over time. In fact, every year you should get a strategic update. And what a strategic update does is it says, look, here's the current strategy, which is good, but we see a desired strategy here. And the things you're doing, if you're, say, a project manager, your project is taking the company to fill this gap that now exists from the current strategy to the desired strategy. And so strategy will change over time, and it's your role to ensure this continued alignment throughout. So, related to this week, effective goal setting at any level has to be achieved. Your team's goals aligned with the strategic goals. Now, effective goal setting at any level will always use the SMART acronym. SMART, SMART acronym, right? That stands for the goal should be specific, measurable, attainable, but challenging, realistic, and time bound. Goals are never ambiguous, right? And goals should be set with employee participation, right? They should be specific, as I mentioned. And I'll just reemphasize goals should be challenging. Okay. Now, once I have this strategic vision and goals, now I'm able to impart clear vision and goals to my team. Okay. So, how many goals do I give my team? Interesting question. Well, in fact, let me ask it another way. Does everyone on your team know the team's top 2 or 3 goals, let alone the company's top 2 or 3 goals? So, what I like to do, and this is a borrowed term, is talk about goals in terms of a WIG, 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 wildly important goal. And so, your team should know the top 2 or 3 wildly important goals. They ought to be able to rifle them off very quickly. And they ought to understand how that team aligns their efforts with the company to achieve these wildly important goals. So, wildly important goals are few and they are highly important goals. These are things we must achieve or no other goal matters, right? So a WIG can be seen as a way to ensure that everyone knows the top priorities, right? Because that's what WIGs are. WIGs are the team's top 2 or 3 priorities. And how they will align their efforts to achieve them will be much of the work you do as a manager that transforms. So wildly important goals, again, or WIGs, are the few highly important goals you must achieve or no other goal matters, right? And so as a manager, you want to make sure that your team is aware of the top 2 or 3 WIGs for your team. You can have other goals, but what are your wildly important goals? And how do they align with the team's effort to accomplish the company's strategic objectives? Okay. Now we're going to watch a video of one of the authors of this WIG process, and it is really very interesting. So let's listen.
The first discipline is to focus on the wildly important. If a team has 2 to 3 goals in addition to the whirlwind, they can usually get 2 to 3 done. When that same team attempts 4 to 10 goals, how many do you think they're going to get done now? Far fewer. They actually go backwards. This is the law of diminishing returns, and it is as real as gravity. You can ignore it, but it won't ignore you. At 11 to 20 goals, you're not likely to accomplish anything in addition to the whirlwind. But 0 doesn't mean that the team isn't getting any results. The whirlwind is still running, right? 0 means the team isn't executing anything new. 0 means that leadership is kind of irrelevant. Now, while this is a simple enough idea, it's very difficult for most teams or organizations to adhere to. Here's why. Imagine those 11 to 20 goals for a second and ask yourself this. In your experience, are those 11 to 20 goals based on good ideas or bad ideas? They're almost always based on good ideas, and that's the problem. There will always be more good ideas than there is capacity to execute. There are 2 focus traps we want you to be aware of. Number 1, saying yes to all the good ideas, what we've been talking about. Number 2, turning everything in the whirlwind into a goal. We measure a lot of things in the whirlwind that are necessary to maintain the operation. But just because you can measure something doesn't mean it needs to be a goal for optimization. If we try and optimize every objective, every metric in the whirlwind, particularly if they require a change in behavior, we inevitably stall the organization. It's okay for the whirlwind to occupy 80% of an organization's energy. That's life support, after all. But don't let it take 100%. Give the other 20% to the thing that is going to make all the difference, the thing you are going to blow the doors off of. We call this a wildly important goal, or a WIG. Simply put, the 4 disciplines of execution are a treatment to achieve the wildly important goal. Once the WIG is achieved and becomes a natural part of the way the organization runs, the WIG can be retired back into the whirlwind. It is still being tracked, but doesn't require the full treatment of 4DX, and the team is free to choose another WIG. Here are 4 rules for thinking about your wildly important goal. Have only 1 WIG per person at the same time. Your WIG should only represent one aspect of your team's work, not the sum total of all activities. Even though you are picking a single goal, you haven't actually narrowed your focus. Choose a WIG that represents the most critical gap. In selecting a WIG, don't just think about what's most important. Think also about what is most at risk for being accomplished. When choosing your WIG, think about where applying the treatment of 4 disciplines will have the biggest impact. Create a clear finish line for every wig, a single measure of success in the form of from X to Y by when, where X is the starting line, Y is the finish line, and when is the deadline. Think, where are we now? Where do we need to be? And by when? Too often, goals are defined in general terms with a variety of measures that merely dilute accountability and clarity. In the 1950s, the struggling U.S. space program had the goal of leading the world in space exploration. And that was a fine goal, and there were lots of measures associated with it, but there was very little focus, clarity, or accountability. In 1961, John F. Kennedy said something a little different. He said, "We'll put a man on the moon by the end of the decade and return him safely home." When he stated that from X to Y by when, he created a line in the sand. Accountability went up, and interestingly enough, so did engagement. And we don't believe that engagement went up because accountability went up. We believe they both went up because there's a little switch in people's heads called game on. And whether Kennedy realized it or not, he threw the game on switch.
Okay, great video. And so this is kind of a summary. So he talks about setting up your team to get results through these goals. So he talked about the what, right? Which is defining goals to get the desired results and defining the desired results. So once the why becomes clear, you need to define the what in a way that people can act on it. And the what is all about defining these desired results. So it means clarifying the significant outcomes that represent fulfillment and success for your team. Now, the what supports the why. Okay, so you need to set up a few goals for your team and that are going to help you achieve this broader organizational priorities. So effective goals support the why through the team's contribution to the organization. You also want to focus your approach. Okay, you can only achieve, as he mentioned, a few goals with excellence. So the more goals you have, the lower your chance of achieving any of them with excellence. And so he discusses from X to Y by when, right? So to clarify the what and maintain focus on your goals, the goals must be specific and measurable. So your team's success ultimately comes down to achievement of the goals. So you need to be clear about the starting point and the ending point. And so he offers this formula here to describe your team goals, right? So you have some verb, what you want to make progress on, and from X to Y by when, okay? And so some examples might be increase team sales from $1 million to $1.8 million by December 31st, or increase our customer loyalty score from 45 to 65 by the end of the second quarter. So here is, just in its simplified form, the goal setting formula, right? We say we want to go from X to Y by when. That's a summary of it. So X becomes the starting point here, the starting line. This becomes the finish line to Y, and when is your deadline as discussed here. And as I mentioned, there were some examples on the previous slide. Or we might say to increase new client sales of existing product line from $1 million to $1.4 million by December 31st. In that case, $1 million is the X, that's the starting line. Where you are now, $1.4 million becomes the Y, the finish line, where you want to be. And December 31st is the when, the deadline. Okay, that was fun. I am going to pause here and actually, let me just finish up with, please look up PESTLE. PESTLE is a way to ensure competitive advantage in this strategy and goal alignment. That's for you to look up. I'm going to pause here and come back for Motivational Theory Part 2 for Week 4.